The golden age of the Targaryen dynasty rides on the wings of its beasts, yet the seeds of its ultimate undoing are sown in the quiet rooms of the Red Keep. High above the clouds, a massive, golden-scaled dragon cuts gracefully through the sky. Syrax soars with effortless majesty before dipping her wings, descending toward the sprawling, crowded expanse of King's Landing. The beast glides over the massive stone architecture, landing heavily on a stone platform inside the cavernous dragon pit. Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen unbuckles her riding leathers and climbs down from the saddle. Ser Harold Westerling, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, steps forward to welcome her. Relief washes over the veteran knight as he expresses his gratitude for her safe arrival. Rhaenyra offers a playful, dismissive retort, but Ser Harold counters with affectionate gravity, noting that whenever the princess flies away, his only comfort is knowing the golden beast will bring her back alive. Moments later, Rhaenyra joins her closest companion, Alicent Hightower. Alicent looks upon the resting beast with awe, remarking that Syrax is growing at an astonishing rate. She notes that the dragon has expanded significantly, predicting that she will soon dwarf Caraxes, the blood-red beast belonging to Prince Daemon. Rhaenyra cracks a confident smile, joking that Syrax is becoming large enough to carry two riders simultaneously. Alicent shifts uncomfortably, countering that while the thought of riding a dragon sounds romantic, she derives far more joy from watching the creatures from the safety of the ground rather than taking to the skies herself. The massive iron-reinforced doors of the underground enclosure groan open. Handled by the robed dragon keepers using low Valyrian commands, Syrax retreats into the dark, echoing depths of the cave where she is securely housed. The narrative shifts to the outer gates of the Red Keep. Rhaenyra and Alicent travel side by side on horseback, their small palfrey mounts pacing through the high stone archways. The towering towers of the fortress loom overhead as the two young women pass through the bustling inner courtyard together. Dismounting, they walk through the palace corridors. Rhaenyra teases her friend about her reluctance to fly, lightheartedly steering the conversation to ask how Alicent has been managing. Alicent smiles warmly, assuring the princess that all is well in her world. Alicent gently insists that Rhaenyra should stop fretting over her. The atmosphere turns heavy as they enter the royal apartments, where Queen Aemma lies confined to her chambers. The queen is heavily pregnant, her body swollen and exhausted as she nears the final days of a grueling labor. Alicent looks at the suffering queen and quietly reminds Rhaenyra that one day, she too will be expected to endure this exact same trials for the sake of the realm. Rhaenyra expresses her deep anxiety, noting that the entire castle is hyper-focused on the unborn child, forcing her mother to live under constant surveillance. Aemma looks up from her pillows, her voice thick with exhaustion. She echoes Alicent's sentiment, warning her young daughter that the pain of childbirth is an inevitable reality. She explains that the birthing bed is the unique battlefield for royal women, a brutal burden mandated to preserve the Targaryen line. Rhaenyra rebels against the thought, declaring defiantly that she would much rather ride into battle as a knight, winning honor and glory on the battlefield, rather than being broken by childbirth. Queen Aemma shakes her head with a weary, knowing smile. She reiterates that they possess royal wombs, and whether Rhaenyra wishes it or not, childbirth is their duty to the throne. Dismissing the dark conversation, she tells Rhaenyra to go wash herself, teasingly noting that her daughter reeks of the dragon pit. Deep within the Red Keep, the atmosphere shifts to the political heart of the realm. King Viserys Targaryen sits at the head of the small council table. Lord Corlys Velaryon, the master of ships, brings troubling news from across the narrow sea. He reports that an alliance of 3 Associ-free cities has formalized into a power known as the Triarchy. This foreign armada has launched a campaign in the Stepstones, violently purging the pirate factions that long plagued the shipping lanes. Viserys chuckles lightly, misinterpreting the news as a positive development for their own trade routes. Lord Corlys quickly dampens the king's optimism. He reveals that a ruthless commander named Kragas Drahar has seized control as the Prince Admiral of this Triarchy. Drahar has earned a terrifying moniker, the Crab Feeder, due to his barbaric practice of pinning his captured enemies to the beaches to be drowned by the rising tide and eaten alive by crabs. At that moment, Rhaenyra slips into the room to perform her duties as cupbearer. Viserys casts a stern glance toward his daughter, reminding her that a princess must maintain discipline and avoid arriving late to official council proceedings. The council business resumes, turning toward internal matters. Lord Lyman Beesbury, the master of coin, presents the financial reports, noting that the city's economy is flourishing and the treasury is well stocked, largely due to the aggressive tax collection and policing strategies executed by Prince Daemon Targaryen. Beesbury notes that while he expected Viserys to formally summon Daemon to commend his achievements as commander of the City Watch, the prince remains conspicuously absent. Ser Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, instantly objects, voicing deep suspicion regarding Daemon's true intentions. He questions why the prince is gathering such a massive amount of coin and weapon supplies under the crown's name. Viserys defends his younger brother, silencing the room by stating he trusts the gold is being used appropriately to enforce the law. Lord Corlys aggressively cuts back into the conversation, warning the council that ignoring the Triarchy's stranglehold on the stepstones will eventually choke the realm's commerce. Viserys offers a placating response, promising that the crown is monitoring the situation. The discussion shifts to the upcoming tourney organized to celebrate the birth of the king's unborn child. Grand Maester Mellas speaks up, stating that the astrological signs and portents are favorable for a successful birth, though he urges caution. Otto Hightower suggests postponing the massive expenditures of the tournament until the child is safely delivered. Viserys waves away the caution, confidently asserting that by the time any foreign crisis becomes urgent, his new son will be born and the realm will be united in celebration. When Mellas admits that the maesters cannot guarantee the gender of the child, Viserys dismisses the doubt entirely. He declares with absolute certainty that the queen carries a boy, claiming a prophetic dream has assured him that his son will inherit the total power of the Iron Throne. As the council dismisses, Otto Hightower slips away early, an action Rhaenyra notices and questions, only to find her father is already well aware of the hand's movements. Following the adjournment, Rhaenyra walks into the cavernous Great Hall. She halts at the sight of her uncle, Prince Daemon, lounging arrogantly upon the jagged swords of the Iron Throne. Startled by his audacity, she demands to know what he is doing in the seat of the king. Daemon offers a cold, confident smirk, stating he is merely testing the seat, musing that the throne might very well belong to him in the future. Rhaenyra walks closer, countering sharply that the throne will never be his if he throws his life away in battle. Daemon chuckles, conceding her point with an amused nod. When Rhaenyra questions why he has shunned the royal court for weeks, Daemon sneers, stating he finds the endless political bickering incredibly tedious. Rhaenyra asks what finally drove him back to the capital, and Daemon claims he returned because the king is throwing a massive tournament in his honor. Rhaenyra corrects his arrogance instantly, stating the games are for her father's incoming heir. Daemon's smile turns mocking as he reminds her that until a son is actually born, she remains the recognized heir. Pulling a small box from his leathers, Daemon changes the subject, presenting her with a rare gift. He reveals a stunning necklace crafted from pure Valyrian steel. He steps down from the throne, gently fastening the dark metal around her neck, whispering that they now both wear a physical piece of their ancestral legacy. The narrative shifts back to the quiet bond between the two young women of the court. Rhaenyra and Alicent retreat to the sanctuary of the palace gardens to escape the mounting pressures of the Red Keep. The two girls lie in the grass beneath the shade of the trees, a massive history tome open between them. Alicent takes the lead, grilling the princess on her historical studies. Rhaenyra sighs, her mind completely detached from the dry lineages of old lords. When Alicent fumbles a noble title, she jokes nervously that her father, Otto, will be furious if she fails her duties. The academic facade drops, giving way to raw vulnerability. Rhaenyra confesses her deepest fear. The moment her father receives his coveted son, she will be cast aside and forgotten by the court. Alicent offers gentle comfort, expressing her fervent hope that their own sisterly bond will remain unchanged regardless of the succession. Rhaenyra looks up at the sky, admitting that she has no desire to be confined by marriage or trapped within the suffocating politics of the court. She longs to fly across the narrow sea on dragonback, exploring unknown lands in absolute freedom. Sensing Rhaenyra's sudden shift in energy, Alicent notices her friend preparing to leave, asking where she must be. Rhaenyra responds that she has an obligation to attend to within the hour. They share a final lingering discussion regarding a historical tale of a defiant Valyrian princess and a great fleet before parting ways. Meanwhile, a darker reality unfolds in the king's private quarters. Viserys sits stripped to the waist as royal attendants and Grand Maester Mellas examine a gruesome, festering ulcer on his lower back. An attendant notes that they have dispatched word to specialized healers to determine the exact nature of the spreading rot. Viserys groans, dismissively tracking the injury to a minor cut he received from the jagged edges of the Iron Throne itself, insisting it is nothing more than a superficial scratch. The attendants gently challenge his denial, suggesting that the immense emotional stress regarding the queen's impending labor is actively poisoning his physical health. They warn the king that knowledge of this spreading affliction must be tightly guarded to prevent whispers of weakness from infecting the realm. They urge a more aggressive course of action. After examining the dark, oozing tissue, Maester Mellas reveals that the infection has grown significantly worse. He recommends an advanced, highly specialized cauterization treatment, warning that while the procedure is exceedingly expensive, it is the only viable option to halt the rot. Viserys gives his grim consent. Later that evening, Viserys seeks comfort in the warm, candlelit chambers of his wife. Queen Aemma sits submerged in a massive, steaming copper bath, trying to alleviate the crushing weight of her pregnancy. Viserys enters with a soft smile, joking that she spends far more time soaking in the water than he does sitting upon the seat of power. Aemma offers a tired, melancholic smile, whispering that the hot water is the absolute only place where she can escape the physical agony of her condition. Viserys attempts to lift her spirits, promising that the moment their boy is born, the entire realm will drown them both in love and adoration. Aemma smiles softly, noting that Rhaenyra is actively hoping for a little sister instead. Aemma chuckles weakly, revealing that Rhaenyra has already gone so far as to select a name for the baby. Viserys asks what name his daughter has chosen, and Aemma reveals the ancient Valyrian name, Visenya. The conversation turns to the political shadow looming over the family. Aemma asks if Viserys has received any word from Daemon. The king sighs, noting that since he handed his brother command of the city watch, communication has been sparse, though he remains certain Daemon will appear for the tourney. Aemma voices her lingering anxiety, gently confronting Viserys for organizing a massive, expensive celebration for a child that has not yet entered the world. She warns him that nature may still present them with a daughter. Viserys cuts her off with absolute conviction, reiterating his prophetic dream of a son crowned in glory while the dragons roar. Aemma listens with a heavy heart, quietly grounding him in the brutal reality of her failed pregnancies. Aemma looks up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears as she delivers a tragic ultimatum. This must be her final pregnancy. She lays bare the horrific toll her duty has taken on her body, listing the agonizing loss of one child in the cradle, 2 stillbirths, and 2 miscarriages in rapid succession. She apologizes for failing to provide a living male heir, but begs him to understand that she cannot endure the emotional and physical grief of losing another child. Across the city, the narrative shifts to the damp, stone barracks of the Gold Cloaks. Prince Daemon marches into the main hall. Instantly, hundreds of heavily armed guards snap to attention, striking their fists against their breastplates in a unified, disciplined salute to their royal commander. Daemon steps onto a raised platform, looking over his newly reformed army. Daemon commands the room with fierce intensity, reminding his men that before he took command, they were nothing more than starving, pathetic street dogs. He declares that he has transformed them into a pack of vicious wolves. He warns them that the security of his brother's kingdom is being compromised by a plague of lawlessness, offering them a total pardon for their past crimes if they execute his orders tonight. He commands them to purge the criminal underbelly of King's Landing, promising that by morning, the entire city will tremble at their name. Under the cover of darkness, Daemon leads the Gold Cloaks into the squalid alleys of Flea Bottom. What follows is a swift, coordinated campaign of terror. The guards kick down doors, dragging thieves, rapists, and murderers into the muddy streets. The operation is devoid of trials or mercy. Criminals are beaten and summarily dismembered in public view. When a man is brought before Daemon accused of carrying illegal weapons, the prince draws his Valyrian steel blade, Dark Sister, and cleaves the man's head from his shoulders in a single stroke. The Gold Cloaks stack the severed limbs and confiscated weapons into wooden carts as the bloody night comes to a close. The following morning, the small council chamber erupts in fierce condemnation of Daemon's actions. Otto Hightower leads the assault, arguing that the prince transformed the execution of justice into a barbaric, stomach-turning spectacle. Another councillor complains that he had merely requested a routine patrol to manage the vagrant population, not a slaughter in the streets. They demand the king rein in his brother. Viserys turns his gaze to Daemon, demanding an explanation for the butchery. Daemon lounges back, completely unbothered, asking if his new city watch did not perform their duties beautifully. Viserys snaps back, reminding him that his command does not grant him total autonomy, and that he must protect the populace rather than ruling through fear. Daemon stands his ground, arguing that a capital notorious for unchecked depravity required a harsh lesson to guarantee the safety of the visiting lords. The bickering intensifies as Otto Hightower attempts to pivot the attack toward Daemon's personal failings, icily suggesting the prince should redirect his boundless energy toward his neglected marriage. Viserys joins the reprimand, pointing out that Daemon has utterly abandoned his ancestral seat at Runestone and his lawful wife, Lady Rhea Royce. Daemon responds with dripping sarcasm, mocking his wife and vulgarly insulting the women of the Vale by stating the local sheep are far more attractive. Viserys slams his hand down, reminding Daemon of his sacred marriage vows. Daemon steps directly into Otto Hightower's space, delivering a lethal insult by suggesting that if the hand desires a lady to warm his bed, he is welcome to take Rhea for himself. Viserys terminates the meeting in a fury, delivering a final warning that any further unsanctioned bloodshed will result in Daemon being held personally accountable. Daemon offers a mock bow, whispering his compliance. Following his dismissal, Daemon seeks refuge from the political suffocations of the castle by retreating to a luxurious city brothel. He spends hours drowning his frustrations in wine and flesh. After a brief, hollow moment of intimacy, Daemon abruptly pulls away, sitting on the edge of the bed in deep frustration. His favorite concubine, Miseria, attempts to soothe his bruised ego. She assures him that he is Daemon Targaryen, the unmatched rider of Caraxes and the wielder of Dark Sister, promising him that the king can never truly cast him out of the succession. The narrative shifts to the grand tourney grounds outside the city walls. Banners wave under a brilliant sky as thousands of small folk and noble lords fill the massive wooden stands. King Viserys stands before the roaring crowd, officially raising his hands to open the games, thanking the realm for gathering to witness the feats of arms. Viserys commands the arena, announcing that the finest knights of the Seven Kingdoms have arrived to compete for glory. He links the festival directly to the impending labor of Queen Aemma, inviting the entire realm to share in his absolute certainty that a royal son is about to be born to the dynasty. The king raises his cup, offering a final blessing from the seven heavens as the crowd explodes into cheers, signaling the start of the tournament. The jousting begins with high impact. Armored knights spur their warhorses forward, lances lowered as they collide at terrifying speeds down the center barrier. In the royal box, Queen Aemma's seat remains conspicuously empty, leaving Rhaenyra and Alicent to sit prominently at the front of the stands, watching the violent displays unfold. Rhaenyra and Alicent sit close together, watching the brutal hits while whispering quietly about the political subtext hidden beneath the chivalry. The violence on the field escalates. In a subsequent tilt, two knights smash into each other with such immense velocity that both riders are violently unhorsed, crashing into the dirt in a tangle of broken wood and steel. Alicent's eyes track a skilled, unheralded competitor who has been dominating the field. She turns to a nearby guard, inquiring about the identity of Ser Criston Cole. The guard reveals that Cole is merely the son of a low-born steward to the Lord of Blackhaven, but warns that despite his lack of noble lineage, his martial skill is extraordinary. Alicent winces as the injured knights are carried away, noting the severity of the sport. The herald's voice booms across the stadium, announcing the arrival of Prince Daemon Targaryen. The crowd erupts into a frenzy as the prince rides out onto the sands, clad in dark, ornate dragon-crested armor, radiating absolute arrogance. Daemon rides along the barrier to choose his victim. Seeking to deliver a direct psychological insult to the hand of the king, he points his lance toward Ser Gawain Hightower, Otto's eldest son. The two men line up at opposite ends of the track, urging their mounts into a gallop. The horses thunder down the track. In the first pass, the lances shatter violently against their shields, but both men remain seated. They wheel around for a second pass. This time, Daemon aims his lance with lethal precision, catching Gawain squarely in the chest. The impact lifts the Hightower knight clean out of the saddle, sending him crashing violently into the dirt. Daemon rides onward, completely victorious. He steers his horse directly beneath the royal box, looking up at Alicent. Alicent offers a polite, strained compliment on his victory. Daemon smiles dangerously, responding that her presence in the stands has granted him all the motivation he required. The celebration in the royal box is instantly shattered. A breathless messenger sprints to the king, whispering a frantic update from the birthing chamber. Queen Aemma's labor has taken a catastrophic turn. Viserys pales, bolting from his seat and racing back into the castle. He arrives to a scene of absolute horror. Aemma is screaming in agony, her body drenched in blood and sweat as the midwives struggle frantically around her. Viserys demands to know why the birth has stalled. The Grand Maester reveals that the baby is breech, stuck in a position that threatens to kill both mother and child. Viserys frantically commands them to save his heir at any cost. Melas assures the king they are doing everything possible, but warns that Aemma's natural strength is rapidly failing. Viserys kneels at his wife's bedside, desperately gripping her hand, weeping as he lies to her, promising that everything will be fine. Grand Maester Melas pulls Viserys away into the shadows of the room. He informs the king that they have reached a horrific impasse. He explains that the citadel teaches a brutal surgical procedure, a literal cutting open of the womb to extract the infant. However, due to the primitive nature of the surgery and the certain blood loss, Queen Aemma will absolutely not survive the blade. Viserys freezes, his mind fracturing under the weight of the choice. Melas pressures him, stating that he must act immediately if he wishes to save the child, or stand by and watch both mother and baby die in the bed. Back at the tournament grounds, the violence reaches its apex. The herald announces that Ser Criston Cole will face Prince Daemon Targaryen in the final bracket. The low-born Dornish knight and the royal prince stare each other down across the lists. They spur their horses forward, lances braced as the scene cuts away at the moment of impact. The perspective shifts back to the bedroom of horror. Viserys returns to Aemma's side, tears streaming down his face. He whispers that they are going to bring the baby out now. He gives a silent nod to the maesters. Instantly, several physically strong guards and attendants move in, pinning the terrified queen to the mattress by her limbs. Aemma realizes what is happening, her eyes widening in absolute panic as she screams at her husband, demanding to know what he is doing to her. Viserys continues to weep, repeating his hollow assurances. Aemma thrashes violently against the restraints, begging for mercy, screaming in sheer terror as Melas brings down the heavy silver blade, slicing into her flesh. The scene cuts back to the blinding sunlight of the arena. Criston Cole delivers a massive blow, shattering Daemon's lance and causing the prince's horse to stumble, sending Daemon crashing into the dirt. Infuriated by the humiliation, Daemon bounds to his feet, drawing his sword. The announcer screams that the prince demands a contest of arms on foot. Daemon charges like a madman, swinging his blade with lethal intent, but Criston Cole meets him beat for beat, their weapons clashing in a furious, exhausting duel of steel against steel. Back in the dark chamber, Aemma's agonizing screams echo off the stone walls. The maesters plunge their hands into the incision, pulling the infant from her shredded womb as a torrent of blood covers the sheets. The narrative cuts rapidly between the parallel slaughters. On the blood-soaked field, Daemon and Criston trade devastating blows. In the castle, Aemma's life force pours out onto the bed. For a brief second on the field, Daemon delivers a spinning strike that drops Criston to his knees. Believing the fight is won, Daemon turns to raise his arms to celebrate before the roaring crowd. It is a fatal error of arrogance. Criston Cole leaps up from behind, slamming his morning star into Daemon's back, sending the prince crashing into the dirt. Criston holds his weapon to the prince's throat, forcing Daemon to hit the ground and yield. His victory secured, Criston offers a hand to help the fallen prince up. Back in the silent royal bedchamber, the screaming abruptly stops. Queen Aemma's eyes grow glassy as her body goes completely limp, drained of life. The horrific sacrifice yields a momentary reward. Maester Melas cleans a crying baby boy, presenting King Viserys with his long-sought son, Prince Balon. But the victory is short-lived. Hours later, the child dies in the cradle. The joy of the tournament instantly vanishes as word of the double tragedy reaches the arena. The music stops, the crowds fall silent, and an oppressive grief settles over the entire city. The scene shifts to a bleak, windswept cliffside overlooking the sea. The entire royal court stands dressed in black mourning attire before a massive stone pyre. Wrapped in Targaryen burial shrouds are the bodies of Queen Aemma and the infant Balon. Viserys stands frozen, entirely broken, unable to find the strength to give the final command. Daemon steps to Rhaenyra's side, quietly murmuring that her father needs her strength now more than ever. Rhaenyra stands rigid, her voice dripping with bitter grief as she whispers back that she can never replace the son he always wanted. She steps forward, looking at her father one last time before facing the pyres. In a hollow, tearful voice, she commands her dragon, Dracarys. Syrax steps forward, unleashing a massive torrent of golden flame that engulfs the stone structure, incinerating her mother and brother into ash. Days later, an emergency session of the small council is called to address the vacuum of power. Viserys sits in dead silence as his counselors bicker over his grief. When he notices his daughter's absence, he asks where Rhaenyra is, only to be ignored as the lords insist they must settle the succession immediately. They point out that by law and custom, the unchecked heir to the Iron Throne is now Prince Daemon. Otto Hightower launches a fierce political attack, warning that naming Daemon as the official successor will invite ruin and destabilize the entire realm. Viserys snaps, asking if they care for the realm or their own necks. Otto persists, listing Daemon's violent excesses as commander of the city watch as proof of his volatile nature. Viserys tries to defend his blood, stating he placed Daemon there to enforce order, but Otto counters that Daemon is an ambitious wild card who would gladly see the king dead to inherit the crown. Lord Strong attempts to calm the room, suggesting that making an immediate decree while the king is grieving is unwise, while other lords note that while Rhaenyra is the king's firstborn, a woman has never sat the Iron Throne. Viserys erupts in absolute grief, screaming that his wife and son are barely cold in the earth, refusing to be forced to choose between his remaining family members. Later that evening, a deeply shaken Alicent Hightower enters her father's private study. She throws her arms around Otto, breaking down into tears over the tragedy. Otto comforts her, softly asking how Rhaenyra is coping. Alicent whispers that her friend is utterly shattered by the loss of her mother. Otto shifts the conversation, inquiring about the emotional state of the king. Alicent notes that Viserys is completely heartbroken and isolated. Otto takes his daughter by the shoulders, his political machinations coming to light as he commands her to go to the king's private chambers to offer him companionship in his dark hour. Alicent hesitates, admitting she has no idea how to comfort a grieving monarch. Otto insists that her mere presence will suffice. As she turns to leave, Otto calls out to her with calculated instructions, telling her to wear one of her deceased mother's finest dresses for the visit. A guard knocks on the door of the king's darkened chambers, announcing the arrival of Lady Alicent Hightower. Alicent steps into the room, dressed in a sophisticated gown. Viserys looks up from a miniature model of old Valyria he has been constructing, asking how she fares. Alicent moves softly, presenting him with a rare historical text, noting that she knows he possesses a deep passion for history. The king accepts the offering with a weary nod of gratitude. Alicent sits near him, sharing her own experience with grief. She explains that when her own mother passed away, the court tried to drown her in hollow stories, when all she truly wanted was for someone to acknowledge the massive void left behind. She looks at Viserys with genuine empathy, offering her deepest condolences as the king listens in comforted silence. Meanwhile, Prince Daemon returns to the raucous atmosphere of the city brothels. However, the prince sits isolated in a chair, staring blankly into space, entirely detached from the carousing around him. Mysaria approaches him, whispering slyly that due to the infant's death, he has been restored as the rightful heir to the throne. Daemon stands up on a table, gathering his officers and companions around him. He delivers a highly controversial alcohol-fueled speech, declaring that the small council and the king fear his strength because they know they cannot easily replace his position in the succession. He boasts that when the gods take a life they must offer a replacement. Raising his goblet high into the air, he delivers a callous, mocking toast to the dead infant, naming him the heir for a day. The treasonous display is brought directly to the king. The next morning, a furious Otto Hightower reports Daemon's mocking toast to Viserys, characterizing it as a direct assault on the dignity of the crown. Outraged, Viserys summons his brother to the throne room. Daemon walks into the empty hall, finding Viserys standing at the base of the Iron Throne, trembling with absolute fury. Viserys roars that Daemon has disgraced their house, demanding he account for his words. Daemon tries to deflect, but Viserys barks at him to address him strictly as Your Grace. Viserys directly levels the accusation, asking if he openly celebrated his nephew's death as the heir for a day. Daemon doesn't deny the words. Instead, he unleashes years of built-up resentment, shouting that everyone processes grief differently. He fiercely accuses Viserys of being a weak king who allows himself to be manipulated by sycophants like Otto Hightower. Daemon rages that while he has consistently protected the king's interests, Viserys has constantly pushed him away, banishing him to the Vale or the City Watch because he refuses to trust his own brother. Viserys fires back, stating Daemon's volatile nature makes him impossible to trust. Daemon stands tall, boldly declaring himself the true rightful protector and heir of the dynasty. Viserys draws himself up, completely severing the bond. He strips Daemon of his commands and banishes him from King's Landing, ordering him to return to his wife at Runestone tonight. The narrative shifts to the subterranean dragon pit. Rhaenyra stands in the dim light before a massive dragon enclosure, her face etched with grief. King Viserys walks down to join her, standing before the colossal skull of Balerion the Black Dread. The king breaks the silence, speaking of the ancient grandeur of old Valyria, noting it was the pinnacle of human civilization before its catastrophic downfall. He asks Rhaenyra what she truly sees when she looks upon their beasts. Rhaenyra pauses, reflecting that while the realm believes the Targaryens are divine beings closer to gods than men, that power belongs entirely to the dragons. She notes that without their beasts, they are no different from any other mortal lords. She admits that the idea that they completely control their dragons is a dangerous illusion. They are ancient, terrifying entities that can never be truly mastered, and warning that if their house forgets this truth, they will burn just as Valyria did. Viserys looks at her with newfound respect, realizing her maturity. He openly apologizes to her, shedding his grief as he admits he spent too many years ignoring her potential while desperately chasing a son. Viserys looks his daughter in the eye, officially informing her that he has chosen her to become the next ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, assuring her she is entirely capable of bearing the crown. He declares that Daemon was never fit for the seat of power. The scene cuts to the crowded Great Hall of the Red Keep, where hundreds of lords have gathered. Lord Corlys Velaryon steps forward, sinking to one knee before the king and Princess Rhaenyra. He delivers a powerful blood oath, swearing the total military and political loyalty of House Velaryon to Rhaenyra as the designated heir to the Iron Throne, invoking the old and new gods to bind his lineage to her protection. Viserys' voiceover intercuts, delivering a terrifying, closely guarded royal secret to Rhaenyra back in the Dragon Pit. He reveals that the founder of their dynasty, Aegon the Conqueror, was driven to conquer Westeros because of a prophetic dream, a vision he titled A Song of Ice and Fire. Aegon foresaw a catastrophic winter blowing from the deep north, a darkness that would destroy the world of men unless a strong Targaryen sat the Iron Throne to unite the living against the dead. One by one, the ultimate powers of the realm step forward to swear fealty. Lord Bormund Baratheon drops to his knee, pledging his sword and house to Princess Rhaenyra, Lady of Dragonstone. Viserys' voiceover concludes his warning, telling Rhaenyra that she must guard this secret prophecy with her life, carrying the immense weight of the crown forward to ensure the survival of humanity. Rhaenyra stands beside her father before the assembled lords of Westeros. The lords chant her name as she accepts her destiny, while Viserys quietly grips his hand, feeling the sting of a fresh, unhealed cut from the Iron Throne.